I think I didn't do anything wrong, just tried to remind my husband who's really in control. But this morning, a courier handed me a thick envelope from a lawyer. Turns out, leaving him at the gas station wasn't the lesson I thought it would be. Let me back up and explain how we got here, because I'm still processing how everything went so sideways so fast. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Philomela Hartwell. Everyone calls me Melly. And until 3 months ago, I thought I had my life figured out. I'm 34, work as an HR assistant at Morrison & Associates, and I've been married to Evan for 12 years. We have a 10-year-old daughter, Clara, who's the sweetest kid you could imagine, though lately she's been asking too many questions about why Mommy and Daddy don't laugh together anymore. Evan's 36, works in IT, and honestly, he's boring. Not mean, not abusive, just predictable. Same routine every day, coffee at 6:30, work by 8, home by 5:45, dinner, help Clara with homework, bed by 10, rinse and repeat, for 12 years. You can see why a girl might start looking elsewhere for some excitement, right? That's where Jasper comes in. Jasper Rowe, 31, charming smile, works in our marketing department. He's everything Evan isn't. Spontaneous, flirty, makes me feel alive again. It started innocent enough, just coffee breaks that ran long, then after-work drinks, then, well, you can fill in the blanks. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I just needed something for me, you know? Something that made me feel like I was more than just a wife and mother going through the motions. The problem started when Evan began noticing my new energy, as he called it. I was coming home later, paying more attention to my appearance, actually happy for once. Instead of being glad his wife was finally enjoying life, he got suspicious. "Where were you tonight?" he'd ask when I walked in at 8 p.m. instead of 6. "Work event," I'd say, which wasn't technically a lie. Jasper and I did meet at work. "You've had a lot of work events lately." And there it was, that accusatory tone that made my skin crawl, like I was some criminal instead of his wife who deserved a little freedom. "Are you seriously going to be one of those controlling husbands?" I'd snap back. "I work hard all day, and if I want to network and advance my career, that's my right. Maybe if you showed half as much interest in bettering yourself as you do in tracking my every move, you'd understand." Poor Evan would just stand there, looking hurt and confused. "I'm not trying to control you, Melly. I just miss spending time together. Clara misses you too." "Don't you dare use our daughter to guilt me. That's manipulative and gross." Of course, I was the one being manipulative, but I couldn't see that then. All I could see was a husband who was trying to clip my wings just when I was learning to fly. My mother, Patricia, completely supported me. "You're absolutely right to stand your ground," she'd say during our weekly phone calls. "A man who doesn't trust his wife is showing his own insecurity. You've been nothing but faithful and devoted for over a decade. You deserve some independence." I conveniently left out the part about Jasper. Some details are better kept private. Evan's mother, Rose, on the other hand, started calling more frequently, asking pointed questions about how things were going. I could tell she sensed something was off, but I just gave her vague answers about work being busy and hung up as quickly as possible. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in March. Evan and I were driving back from dinner at his mother's house, a tense affair where Rose kept looking at me like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Clara was asleep in the back seat, and Evan was being his usual quiet self. "You barely said 10 words at dinner," he said as we pulled into a gas station to fill up. "Maybe because your mother was giving me the 3rd degree all night." "How's work, Melly? You seem different, Melly. Are you taking care of yourself, Melly?" I mimicked Rose's concerned tone. It's exhausting being analyzed every time I walk in the room. "She's just worried about us, about our family." "There's nothing to worry about unless you've been telling her there is." Evan pulled up to the pump and turned off the engine. I haven't said anything to her, but Melly, we both know something's changed. You're different. We barely talk anymore. You're never home. And when you are, you seem angry at me for existing. Maybe I'm angry because you've become this paranoid, clingy person I don't recognize. The Evan I married trusted me. The Melly I married wanted to spend time with me. That hit a nerve. Get out, I said. What? Get out of the car. I'm not doing this anymore tonight. Melly, what are you talking about? We need to get home. Clara's asleep in the back. Get out! I screamed it loud enough that Clara stirred but didn't wake up. Evan stared at me for a long moment, then quietly unbuckled his seatbelt. Okay, I'll pump the gas and then we can... No, get out and stay out. I'm done with this conversation, and I'm done with you questioning every little thing I do. Maybe a walk will help you think about how you want to treat your wife going forward. Melly, we're 20 miles from home. You can't be serious. Dead serious. Call an Uber. Call your mummy. I don't care. But I'm not spending another minute in this car with someone who doesn't trust me. The look on his face, I'll never forget it. Hurt, confused, and something else. Something that should have been a warning, but I was too angry to recognize it. He got out. I drove off. On the way home, I texted my brother Martin. Had to leave Evan at the gas station. He was being dramatic and paranoid again. He'll probably just Uber home and sulk for a few days. Martin texted back, "Lowell, that's marriage for you. He'll get over it." But when I got home, Evan wasn't there. His phone was on the kitchen table and his laptop was gone. I figured he was having some kind of breakdown and went to stay with his mother. Fine by me. Maybe a night apart would help him gain some perspective. Except one night turned into 2, then 3, then a week. And Evan wasn't at his mother's house. By the following Monday, I was starting to worry. Not because I missed Evan. Honestly, the house was more peaceful without his constant questioning. But because people were starting to ask questions I didn't want to answer. "Where's Daddy?" Clara asked every morning. "He's working on a special project," I'd tell her. "He'll be back soon." But even a 10-year-old has her limits. By the end of the week, Clara was asking why Daddy's clothes were still in his drawers if he was working somewhere else, and why he hadn't called to say goodnight. "Daddy's just figuring some things out, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups need space to think." "Are you getting divorced?" The question hit me like a slap. "What? No. Why would you ask that?" Because Sarah's parents got divorced and first her dad went away for a while, and then they told her they weren't going to live together anymore. "That's not what's happening here. Daddy and I just had a disagreement, and he's being dramatic about it. He'll come home when he's ready to apologize." But even as I said it, I was starting to doubt myself. Where was he staying? How was he getting to work without his car? Why hadn't he tried to contact Clara? At work, I threw myself into my affair with Jasper. If Evan wanted to play games, fine. I had better things to do than sit around worrying about his wounded feelings. "You seem distracted," Jasper said as we grabbed coffee in the break room. "Evan's being impossible. I had to put him in his place last week, and now he's giving me the silent treatment like a child." "What happened?" I told him about the gas station, making it sound like Evan had thrown a tantrum and demanded to be let out of the car. He said he'd rather walk than be in the same space as me. So I said fine, walk. Now he's sulking somewhere, probably at his mother's, waiting for me to come crawling back and apologize for not being the perfect little housewife. Jasper frowned. "That seems extreme, even for a fight." "Trust me, you don't know Evan. He's always been passive-aggressive, but lately he's gotten paranoid and controlling. He questions everything I do, wants to know where I am every second of the day. It's suffocating." "Maybe he suspects something," Jasper said carefully. "Let him suspect. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm allowed to have friends and a life outside of being his wife." But Jasper's comment stuck with me. Was Evan suspicious? Had I been careless? That afternoon, I got an email that made my blood run cold. The subject line read, "Unusual activity detected. Account review required. It was from IT. My heart pounded as I opened it. The email was generic, something about routine security monitoring, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was connected to Evan somehow. He worked in IT for a different company, but he knew people. He knew systems. I immediately called Jasper. We need to be more careful with our emails. What are you talking about? I got flagged by IT for unusual activity. They might be monitoring our communications. There was a long pause. Melly, maybe we should cool things down for a while. If there's heat at work. There's no heat. It's probably just routine. Still, I don't want to risk my job over this. His words stung. Risk his job. What about risking everything for love, for what we had together? But I pushed down my disappointment. You're right. We'll be more careful. That evening, Clara asked again about Evan. Daddy's tired of us, I found myself saying. He's working late because it's easier than being here. It was cruel, and I knew it the moment the words left my mouth. Clara's face crumpled and she ran to her room, but I was so frustrated, so scared, that I needed someone else to hurt the way I was hurting. My mother called that night. How are things with Evan? He's being childish, giving me the silent treatment over nothing. Men do that when they feel threatened. He probably realizes you're too good for him and doesn't know how to handle it. Maybe. Don't you dare apologize first, Philomela. You've done nothing wrong. If he wants to act like a child, let him. He'll come crawling back when he realizes what he's lost. But as I hung up the phone, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was the one who had lost something. The question was, what exactly? And was it too late to get it back? By the second week, Rose was calling every day. I'd been ignoring her calls, but when she showed up at my door on Saturday morning, I had no choice but to face her. Where is my son? She demanded the moment I opened the door. He's fine, Rose. He's just being dramatic. Dramatic? Melly, he hasn't been to work in over a week. His boss called me looking for him. Where is Evan? My stomach dropped. He hadn't been to work. I don't know. I assumed he was staying with you. Well, he's not. And his phone goes straight to voicemail. I'm calling the police. Wait, I grabbed her arm. Don't do that. Look, we had a fight, okay? A bad one. He asked me to drop him off somewhere to cool down, and I haven't heard from him since. But that doesn't mean something happened to him. He's probably just processing. Rose stared at me with the kind of look teachers give students they know are lying. What kind of fight? I gave her the sanitized version. We'd been having marital problems. Things came to a head during the car ride home from dinner. Evan asked me to let him out to clear his head. And you just left him? On the side of the road. At a gas station. It's not like I abandoned him in the wilderness. There were people around, lights, phones. He could have called anyone for a ride. But he didn't call anyone, and now he's missing. He's not missing, Rose. He's hiding. There's a difference. But even as I said it, I was starting to wonder, where could Evan be staying? He didn't have many close friends, and his credit cards were linked to accounts I could see. There hadn't been any unusual charges. Rose insisted on talking to Clara, who told her grandmother the same thing she'd been telling me. She missed Daddy and wanted to know when he was coming home. Mummy says Daddy's tired of us, Clara said, and I wanted to sink through the floor. Rose's eyes flashed. Is that what you told her? I was frustrated. She kept asking questions I didn't have answers to. So you told a 10-year-old that her father abandoned her. What is wrong with you? Nothing is wrong with me. I'm dealing with an impossible situation. My husband disappeared after a fight, and everyone's acting like it's my fault. Isn't it? The question hung in the air between us. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You should be more careful what you say at work. My blood ran cold. Someone was watching me. Someone knew about Jasper. I need you to leave, I told Rose. Melly, now. I have things to handle. After Rose left, I tried calling the number that had texted me, but it went straight to a generic voicemail. I was starting to panic. First the IT email, now anonymous threats. Was Evan behind this? Was he trying to scare me? That evening, I took Clara to dinner at our usual family restaurant, hoping to distract both of us from the growing tension at home. But even there, I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched. "Can we call Daddy?" Clara asked as we waited for our food. "His phone isn't working right now, sweetheart." "Why?" "Sometimes phones break." "Can we get him a new one?" I was saved from answering by my phone buzzing with an email. The sender was someone named David Morrison, not the Morrison from my company, but someone else entirely. The subject line made my stomach lurch. "Regarding your husband, legal consultation required." I excused myself to the bathroom and opened the email with shaking hands. "Mrs. Hartwell, I represent your husband in a legal matter that requires your immediate attention. Please contact my office at your earliest convenience to schedule a meeting. Time-sensitive matters are involved." A lawyer. Evan had hired a lawyer. I called the number immediately, but got an answering service. "Mr. Morrison is with a client but will return your call first thing Monday morning." The weekend crawled by. I barely slept, barely ate. Clara kept asking about Evan, and I kept giving her vague non-answers that satisfied no one. My brother Martin came by Sunday afternoon. I told him about the lawyer. "Sounds like Evan finally grew a spine," he said, which wasn't helpful. "This is serious, Martin. What if he's trying to take Clara away from me?" "Based on what? You had a fight and he left. That doesn't make you an unfit mother." But even Martin seemed less supportive than usual. When I pressed him about it, he shrugged. "Look, Melly, I love you, but you've been complaining about Evan for months. Maybe he got tired of being the villain in your story." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means maybe there are two sides to every story, and you've only been telling yours." Monday morning couldn't come fast enough. David Morrison's law office was in the nice part of downtown, all glass and steel and expensive furniture. I dressed carefully, professional but not too formal, confident but approachable. I was going to fix this mess, get Evan to come home, and put our family back together. I was not prepared for what I found when I walked into that conference room. Evan was there, but he looked different. Thinner, maybe, but also calmer, more focused. He was sitting next to a man I assumed was Morrison, and in front of them was a thick manila folder. "Hello, Melly," Evan said quietly. "Evan, thank God. Where have you been? Clara's been worried sick, and your mother's been calling the police." "Mrs. Hartwell," Morrison interrupted, "please have a seat. We have several matters to discuss." I sat down across from them, trying to read Evan's expression. He wasn't looking at me with anger or hurt. He was looking at me like I was a stranger. "First," Morrison said, "let's address your concern about Mr. Hartwell's whereabouts. He's been staying in a short-term rental while consulting with my office about his legal options." "Legal options for what?" Morrison opened the folder. "Divorce, Mrs. Hartwell. And given the circumstances, we're seeking primary custody of your daughter and a division of assets that reflects your contributions to the breakdown of this marriage." My mouth went dry. "What circumstances? We had a fight, couples fight." "You left your husband at a gas station 20 miles from home with no phone, no wallet, and no way to get home," Morrison said. "Fortunately, the gas station's security cameras captured the entire incident." He slid a printed screenshot across the table. It showed me screaming at Evan through the car window, Evan getting out with his hands raised in a placating gesture, and me spieling away while he stood there looking lost and confused. "This constitutes abandonment and reckless endangerment," Morrison continued, "but that's not all." He slid more papers across the table. Email printouts, messages between me and Jasper that were definitely not appropriate for a married woman to be sending. "How did you get these?" I whispered. "IT departments keep records of all company communications," Evan said quietly. "When you were flagged for unusual activity, they ran a routine audit. Jasper's been cooperating fully with their investigation." Jasper had been cooperating. Of course he had. The moment things got complicated, he'd thrown me under the bus to save his own job. This doesn't prove anything, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. Morrison slid more documents across the table. Bank statements showing cash withdrawals I'd made to pay for hotel rooms. Credit card receipts from restaurants where I'd had work dinners with Jasper. Phone records showing dozens of calls between us outside of work hours. Mrs. Hartwell, we have a comprehensive timeline of your affair spanning the last 4 months. We have evidence of your abandonment of your husband in an unsafe situation. We have testimony from co-workers about your inappropriate workplace behavior. And we have recorded statements from your daughter indicating that you told her your husband had abandoned your family. I felt like I was drowning. Evan, please, can we talk about this privately? No, he said firmly. We're past private conversations, Melly. You made this public when you left me at that gas station. You made this about lawyers when you decided our marriage vows meant nothing. I never meant for any of this to happen. The thing with Jasper, it wasn't serious. It was just, I was lonely, and you were always working, and I was working to provide for our family while you were having an affair and telling everyone who would listen what a terrible husband I was. Morrison slid one final set of papers across the table. These are temporary custody documents and a financial freeze order. Effective immediately, Mrs. Hartwell. You'll have supervised visitation with your daughter pending a full custody hearing. All joint accounts are frozen, and Mr. Hartwell will have exclusive use of the family home. You can't do this. I stood up so fast my chair fell over. Clara needs her mother. Clara needs stability, Evan said. Something you've made impossible. I'm fighting this. I'm getting my own lawyer, and I'm fighting every single piece of this. That's your right, Morrison said calmly. But I should warn you, we have more evidence than what we've shown you today. If you choose to make this contentious, we'll present everything in court, including testimony from your co-workers, your family members, and your daughter about the hostile environment you've created. I looked at Evan, trying to find some trace of the gentleman I'd married. How can you do this to me, to us? You did this to us, Melly. I'm just making sure Clara doesn't pay the price for your choices. I stumbled out of that office in a daze. My phone was buzzing with missed calls from work. Apparently, HR wanted to see me immediately. My bank card was declined when I tried to buy coffee. And when I got home, there was a police car in my driveway. The police officer was there for a civil standby, basically making sure no one got violent while Evan collected his belongings. He was there with Rose and Morrison, loading boxes into a truck I didn't recognize. This is my house too, I told the officer. Yes, ma'am, but Mr. Hartwell has a court order allowing him to retrieve his personal property. He's not taking anything that belongs to you. I watched helplessly as they loaded Evan's clothes, his books, his computer equipment. Clara's favorite stuffed animal, the one Evan had given her for her 6th birthday, went into one of the boxes. Where are you taking Clara's things? I demanded. She'll be staying with me and Grandma Rose for a while, Evan said without looking at me. You can't take my daughter away from me. I'm not taking her away. You can see her every other weekend, supervised by a social worker. Supervised? Like I'm some kind of criminal? Like you're someone who told a 10-year-old that her father abandoned her because he was tired of his family. Rose walked past me carrying a box of Clara's books. She didn't say a word, but the look she gave me could have frozen fire. After they left, I sat in my empty house and tried to process what had just happened. In the span of 2 weeks, I'd lost my husband, my daughter, access to my money, and apparently my job. HR had left 3 increasingly urgent voicemails. I called Jasper. The call went straight to voicemail. I called my mother. Mom, I need help. Evan's trying to take Clara away from me. What? Why would he do that? I gave her the same sanitized version I'd been telling everyone, but she wasn't buying it anymore. Philomela, what aren't you telling me? Men don't just hire lawyers and take children away from their mothers over a simple argument. So I told her, About Jasper, about the emails, about the gas station, about all of it. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted so long I thought she'd hung up. "Mom? You had an affair. It wasn't serious, it was just, you had an affair, and then you left your husband stranded at a gas station because he was asking questions about where you were spending your time. When you put it like that, how else should I put it? Oh, Philomela, what have you done?" For the first time since this whole mess started, someone in my family was holding me accountable instead of enabling my narrative. And I didn't like it. "I thought you'd understand. You said I deserved independence." Independence, yes. Adultery, no. There's a difference between having your own life and betraying your family. I hung up on her. Martin wasn't answering his phone. Rose certainly wasn't going to take my calls. I was completely alone. The next morning, I went to work determined to salvage at least one part of my life, but the moment I walked into the building, security was waiting for me. "Mrs. Hartwell, we need you to come with us." The HR meeting was a formality. They'd completed their investigation into my inappropriate workplace relationship and found that I'd violated multiple company policies. I was being terminated immediately, with cause, which meant no severance package. "What about Jasper?" I asked. "Mr. Rowe received a formal reprimand and has been transferred to a different department. His cooperation with our investigation was taken into consideration." Of course it was. Jasper got a slap on the wrist while I lost everything. I cleaned out my desk under the watchful eye of security and walked out of the building carrying a cardboard box of personal items, just like in the movies. Except this wasn't funny or dramatic, it was humiliating. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Custody hearing scheduled for next Friday, 9 a.m. Bring a lawyer." I had 6 days to find an attorney I couldn't afford to fight a case I probably couldn't win for the custody of a daughter I'd already lost. Finding a lawyer willing to take my case was harder than I'd expected. The good ones wanted retainers I couldn't pay, and the cheap ones took one look at the evidence against me and suggested I consider accepting whatever deal Evan was offering. "You left your husband at a gas station after having an affair," my eventually hired attorney, a tired-looking man named Gary Phelps, explained. "That's not a position of strength." It was a momentary lapse in judgment. I was emotional. "And the affair?" "A mistake. People make mistakes." "For 4 months." "I want to fight this, Gary. I want my daughter back." He sighed and opened his briefcase. "Let me show you what we're up against." The evidence was even more damning than what Morrison had shown me in his office. They had security footage from the hotel where Jasper and I used to meet. They had testimony from my co-workers about my mood swings and unprofessional behavior. They had Clara's school counselor's notes about her recent behavioral changes and her repeated statements about Daddy being tired of us. They're painting a picture of an unstable mother who prioritized an extramarital affair over her family's well-being and then emotionally abused her child when her husband started asking questions, Gary explained. The gas station incident is just the cherry on top. What are my chances? Of getting primary custody? 0. Of getting unsupervised visitation? Maybe, if you complete parenting classes and therapy, and if Clara expresses a desire to spend time with you. And if I don't fight it, then you accept the terms they're offering. Supervised visitation every other weekend, no spousal support, and a minimal share of the marital assets. I looked at the papers spread out on Gary's desk. 12 years of marriage reduced to legal documents and evidence exhibits. Somewhere in those files was the woman I used to be, the one who loved Evan enough to marry him, who cried with joy when Clara was born, who actually cared about being a good wife and mother. When had I stopped being that person? When had I become someone who could look at her husband's hurt face and feel nothing but irritation? "I want to see Clara before the hearing," I said. "That can be arranged." The supervised visit took place at a family services center that felt more like a doctor's office than anywhere a child should have to visit her mother. Clara came in holding Rose's hand, and she looked smaller than I remembered. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, trying to sound normal. "Hi, Mummy." We sat at a small table with toys scattered on top, while a social worker observed from the corner. Clara picked up a puzzle and started working on it, not quite looking at me. "How's school?" "Good." "Are you staying with Daddy and Grandma Rose?" "Yeah." "Do you miss home?" She finally looked up at me. "Are you and Daddy getting divorced?" The question I'd been dreading. "We're having some problems, baby, but no matter what happens, we both love you very much. Sarah's parents got divorced, and now she has 2 bedrooms and gets to celebrate Christmas twice. Is that what you want? 2 bedrooms and 2 Christmases?" Clara thought about it seriously. "I just want everyone to stop being sad." That broke my heart more than anything else that had happened. My 10-year-old daughter was worried about everyone else's feelings, while her world fell apart around her. "I'm sorry I've been sad, Clara, and I'm sorry I said those things about Daddy. I was upset, but that's not an excuse. Daddy loves you very much, and he didn't leave because he was tired of us. He left because Mommy made some bad choices." "What kind of bad choices?" "How do you explain adultery and emotional abuse to a 10-year-old? I hurt Daddy's feelings very badly, and I didn't treat him the way a wife should treat her husband. So he decided he couldn't live with me anymore. But he still loves me. More than anything in the world. Do you still love me?" "Of course I do. That will never change." "Then why can't I live with you?" Because sometimes when grown-ups make bad choices, they have to accept consequences. And one of my consequences is that I don't get to take care of you every day anymore." Clara nodded like this made sense to her, which somehow made it worse. The hearing itself was a blur of legal terminology and evidence presentation. Morrison laid out his case methodically. The affair, the abandonment, the emotional manipulation, the hostile home environment. He presented phone records, security footage, witness testimony, and Clara's own statements to her school counselor. Gary did his best to paint me as a woman who had made mistakes but was committed to rebuilding her relationship with her daughter. But even I could hear how weak our defense sounded. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 50s, listened to everything with the kind of expression that told me she'd seen this story 100 times before. "Mrs. Hartwell," she said, when it was time for her ruling, "while I don't doubt that you love your daughter, love alone doesn't make someone a fit parent. Your actions over the past several months demonstrate a pattern of poor judgment, emotional instability, and a willingness to prioritize your own desires over your family's well-being." She awarded Evan primary custody, with me getting supervised visitation every other weekend for the first 6 months. After that, if I completed parenting classes and therapy, and if Clara wanted to spend more time with me, we could revisit the arrangement. The financial settlement was even worse than I'd expected. Because I'd been fired for cause and had contributed to the breakdown of the marriage through my affair, I got almost nothing. The house, the cars, most of the savings, it all went to Evan. "However," the judge continued, "Mr. Hartwell has agreed not to seek spousal support from you, which is generous considering the circumstances." Generous. Evan was being generous by not making me pay him money I didn't have for the privilege of having destroyed our marriage. As we filed out of the courtroom, I caught sight of Evan walking hand in hand with Clara. She was chattering about something, and he was listening with the kind of focused attention that had once made me feel like the most important person in the world. My phone buzzed with an email from HR at Morrison & Associates, not the law firm, my old job. "Final paperwork regarding termination procedures requires your signature. Please contact us within 48 hours to arrange pickup." I stood on the courthouse steps, watching my former family disappear into the crowd, and tried to figure out what came next. I had no job, no money, no home, and no family. I had supervised visits with my daughter every other weekend, assuming I could find a way to rebuild the relationship I'd damaged. All because I'd wanted to teach my stupid husband a lesson about who was really in control. Turns out, he'd been paying attention to my lessons all along. He'd just learned something different than what I'd intended to teach. That's a perfect, quietly devastating closing. Structurally, it reads exactly like the kind of earned humility epilogue that the rest of your series of cautionary confession stories builds toward: restrained, reflective, emotionally precise. You've tied every thematic thread: control versus self-control, lies versus truth, desire versus responsibility. If you want this to function as a true final chapter or narration ending for video or audiobook form, you could enhance it just slightly with a final tonal echo, something that closes the emotional circle rather than simply fading out. For example, sometimes the best lessons are the ones we never wanted to learn. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: losing everything isn't the end. It's just the moment you stop pretending you had anything to lose in the first place. What comes after, that quiet honesty, is where life really begins. That would give your audience the same closure your narrator has reached, not redemption yet, but a sustainable peace. Otherwise, the piece as written is complete. It balances realism with accountability, and it ends on the right note of small, authentic hope. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.